I am Monica Collins, and I am on the Board of Trustees of the Ford Hall Forum, the oldest continuing free lecture series in the country. We pride ourselves on presenting panels that stimulate thought and discussion. We also accept donations. You can help us stay free and freely spoken by sending us a note through your wallet at fordhallforum.org. Thank you. We dedicate this particular forum to the memory of Nora Ephron, a writer, humorist, filmmaker, foodie, relationship dissector, political wag, feminist, mother, loving wife, hating ex-wife, culture queen. Ephron, who died last June 26th, is mourned, especially during a mean election season without irony. One of my favorite Ephron bestsellers is a book cheekily titled, it's a book about aging, and it's cheekily titled, I Feel Bad About My Neck. We can only imagine how Nora Ephron might have riffed on a topic as broad and as juicy as the politics of handsome. We have gathered a group of women who carry on the Ephron spirit with their smarts and their sensibilities. These women have all generously agreed to be on our panel tonight, and we ask them to delve into this subject. It's a subject born of Mitt Romney's hairline and jawline, Scott Brown's modeling career, and the retro politics of Mad Men. Did all those Republican conventioneers in Tampa really intend to bomb women's issues back to the Stone Age of pink Formica and princess phones? To lead this discussion about politics, the appearances of politics, and the serio-comic issues thereof, we asked Margery Eagan. Actually, I tapped Margery Eagan to choose her panelists and to moderate this discussion. Margery is co-host of News Talk 96.9 FM's Jim and Margery. With her cohort, Jim Browdy, irrepressible Eagan talks smart and sassy every morning. She is also a columnist for the Boston Herald, where she brings her keen eye and sharp wit to politics, women's issues, lifestyle dilemmas, pop culture. Eagan has written for Boston Magazine. She appears regularly on Channel 2's Beat the Press. She also has guested on numerous national programs, both on radio and TV. A graduate of Smith College, Eagan studied at Stanford. She is the mother of 3 gorgeous kids.
Thank you.
Really, they are. They're incredibly good-looking kids. And they're incredibly smart. And she is a doting caretaker of one adorable dog. I'm proud to say she's a friend. That sounds like a cliche, but I've known her for years, and I couldn't be prouder. Margery?
Thank you very much, Monica. Am I supposed to come up there?
Come up here.
Okay, I'm going to come up there. Drag my little microphone, which seems to have fallen off behind me. In case you're wondering, I had very sexy bunion surgery. And I would just like to tell you that anybody that's thinking about it, it doesn't hurt, but you don't look particularly attractive for a while, but I'm getting much better. So I'm thrilled to be here tonight. That was a lovely introduction. Just in case anybody is fact-checking, I didn't graduate from Smith. Monica, I left, and I graduated from Stanford, so just in case anybody's... It's okay. It's okay. I wanted to get a date. It was difficult at Smith, and so I went to California. Anyway, I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm a big fan of the Ford Hall Forum, and I'm going to introduce our panelists, and then we're going to get this show on the road here. Paula Lyons, sitting right here. She is an executive communications coach and senior communications consultant. Prior to joining Base Communications in 2004. Lyons, you've all seen her, top-rated consumer reporter, familiar face on ABC, CBS, ABC's Good Morning America. She's won regional Emmys for her work and an Enterprise Reporting Award from the Associated Press, and she's a regular panelist on a terrific show on NPR, their weekly comedy quiz, Says You. Paula, thank you very much for being here. Joyce Kulhawik, you probably all know Joyce very well too, best known Emmy Award-winning arts and entertainment critic for CBS Boston, an arts advocate, president of the Boston Theater Critics Association, a member of the Boston Society of Film Critics, a 3-time cancer survivor. She has been the honorary chairperson since 1983 for the American Cancer Society's largest spring fundraiser and is a veritable cancer crusader. She has also performed with the Boston Pops, New England Philharmonic, the Boston Music Viva, did I pronounce that correctly? I hope so.
Yes.
And the Boston Civic Symphony and the Concord Orchestra. Joyce Kulhawik.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Lauren Beckham Falcone is a sidekick. You called yourself a sidekick. I wouldn't call yourself a sidekick. I'd call you one of the stars, or the star of the Lauren and Wally morning show on Boston's WROR-FM. She works right down the hall from me at the radio station. She is the only woman on the show, and she reads the news and shares her wildly funny perspective on life. Lauren is very clever, very funny. She was also winner of the show's Dancing with the WROR Stars Award and donated her
She's
500.
really reaching. I mean, really. She's like,
Well,
it's like one of these kids is not like the other.
Yeah.
But continue.
It was a very important moment in your career, Lauren. We don't want to begin the evening without pointing it out. And you also donated your $500 prize to the Massachusetts Down Syndrome Congress. For 18 years, Lauren was my colleague at the Boston Herald. I was very sad when she left. She's an unbelievably talented writer, too, on pop culture, politics, and news. And certainly, last but not least, is Jan Saragoni, founder and president of Saragoni and Company, Boston native, more than 20 years experience in media relations, marketing, and public affairs. She's been named to very many notable lists, none of which I've ever been named to, not that I'm jealous or anything, Janice. She made Boston Magazine's Fabulous 40 and the 50 most powerful people in Boston. So Jan's a mover and shaker. Remember that tonight. She's also been a regular contributor to the Emily Rooney Show on WGBH-FM and with WGBH reporter Jared Bowen. She served as director of the Massachusetts Convention Center Authority, the Massachusetts Lottery Commission, the Massachusetts Women's Political Caucus, a member of the U.S. Fund for UNICEF's Women's Lunch Committee, and serves on the executive committee of Save Venice. And most important to me, Janice, for a good more than 25 years, has been one of my nearest and dearest friends, so I'm thrilled that she was able to join us tonight. So Monica talked about what we're going to be talking about, the politics of Hanson. We don't want to be too superficial here. This is the Ford Hall Forum, after all, so we're going to try to raise the level just a little bit. But we're going to start to get everybody in the mood. We have a little clip from the Bill Maher show, which I hope is ready to go. Is it ready to go, gang? Should be ready to go in a second? Okay. Here we go. It's coming down right behind us.
Debate, which was women, because that was what they were fighting about. And Mitt Romney and women, he may have his problems with women. There was a tape that came out that hurt him from Boca Raton. We remember that about a month ago. We got hold of another tape of Mitt Romney talking behind closed doors. It's from 25 years ago, so he looks a little different. He's only 40 years old at the time. But check this out. I think this is very, very enlightening of Mitt Romney talking to a group of people at a closed dinner.
Oh, women like myself, busy with our homes, most of us.
Women keep busy in towns like this.
Oh, there's Mitt.
The cities, it's different. The cities are full of women, middle-aged widows, husbands dead, husbands who've spent their lives making fortunes, working and working. Then they die and leave their money to their wives, their silly wives. What do the wives do, these useless women? You see them in the hotels, the best hotels every day by the thousands. Drinking the money, eating the money, losing the money at bridge, playing all day and all night, smelling of money.
Hitchcock, you're right.
Proud of their jewelry, but of nothing else. Horrible. Faded, fat, greedy women.
They're human beings.
Are they?
Okay. I think that gets us in the mood for the evening. What I'm going to do is we're going to go down the line asking you guys if you agree with the whole thesis of the night, you know, that sort of we're a nervous wreck because the economy's in trouble, and Mitt Romney's got his millions and sort of his I'll take care of everything for you, sweetie kind of attitude there. And, you know, Scott Brown, he's saving his wife and saving his daughters, and he's saving every woman in Massachusetts and across the country, of course, the varsity king, as I call him. So, the question, as Monica set it up, is do these dashing fellows and many others like them that have kind of risen up in both parties, actually, but particularly the Republican Party, do they want to take us back to this soothing 50s, 60s kind of lifestyle when America was, you know, on the move and we were all going to go to the moon and men were men and women were women and all that kind of stuff, and we believed in Kennedy's Camelot and stuff. So let's start, my dear friend, with Jan Saragoni. Do you buy this? Yes, no?
Well, first of all,
why?
I'm wondering if Romney's testimony that the Globe, I guess, is trying to, or Gloria Allred is trying to get released, sounds like that. Is that what they're trying to suppress? He's talking about women and that Stenberg divorce. You know, I don't know. I think I go off track a bit with the premise. I think that the notion that we are attracted to, or we put candidates up who are tall white men with chiseled features, and that this somehow is a reaction to changing times or a biracial president. I mean, we've always done that. We've always had men, mostly, who have looked a certain way, have been a certain height. So I'm not so sure that we are doing anything different now politically than we've been doing for the past 50 years.
How about you, Lauren?
Well, I think that I think you're right that we've always sort of gone toward the good-looking white male. I mean, blame it on Disney. You know, they always come in and you think that they're going to sweep you off your feet and fix everything. But I do think that there's something to be said about this particular election. You know, everything's kind of gone, you know, things aren't particularly great for everybody, and you want to blame this sort of new guy in the White House. And you're like, no, that just didn't work. We got to go back to the way it was. Let's get the Mitt Romney type. But, you know, he's unlike a lot of candidates from before where we've come so far, it seems, in a lot of social policies that he wants to just really reverse the clock. And I think like falling, you know, like you're the young girl and you fall for the handsome guy and he says he's going to kind of take care of you, but then he turns around and he doesn't. And we're all sitting in front of the TV on a Saturday night with our Ben and Jerry's crying over the decision we made. And we're calling our friends and be like, can you believe I voted for him? That's what I think is going to happen.
Yeah. But there is this whole Mad Men sort of thing in the culture, because you talked about Banana Republic.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not a mistake that, we love Mad Men for a lot of reasons, but, you know, Banana Republic has the third installment of the Mad Men fashion. So, you know, if you think about it, people sort of want to look a certain way to sort of get back to that feeling. But trust me, wearing a fitted dress is not like getting, you know, your reproductive rights taken away.
Thank you. Because really and truly, this is, I mean, the whole premise is a little bit crazy, and Paul and I have talked about this. Obviously, there have always been really handsome people, white people, that are in the public eye, and you can blame that on the Kennedy and Nixon in 1960, and then that sort of instituted, you know, that looks were that important, and then from then on we had Dan Quayle, we had John Edwards, and we had, you know, the worst case scenario, Gary Hart. Let's not forget, you know, Donna Rice on the monkey business. I mean, that's like send up a scandal from Central Casting or something. That was crazy. But it's just about the surface. I mean, when we talk about, you know, wanting to go back to the good old days, like the 50s, it was the good old days again for white people.
Exactly.
I mean, that was
white men.
it.
Yeah, white men.
I mean, while it may look so lovely on the surface, and, you know, we all watched Father Knows Best, you know, the dark secret about that show was that Robert Young was a raging alcoholic, and it hung over that show like
I was
crazy.
devastated to find that out.
Yeah, it's
the guy
true.
you looked up to all those years.
And that was such an interesting metaphor for really and truly all of the people out there who were not represented, people who were gay who couldn't stand up, who were black, Hispanic, Asian, women who didn't have reproductive rights, while, you know, the man was out harassing people sexually in the workplace or having a mistress or two on the side.
Not like that.
His wife might have been popping pills and sticking her head in an oven at home. You know, I mean, the 60s happened because the 50s didn't work.
Right.
And we need to remember that. So I don't think anybody really wants to drag us back there.
Yeah.
And I think it's more of a superficial kind of thing. But there is a lot of dark sort of right-wing baggage buried in the whole Republican agenda.
No kidding. We've had a few GOP Senate candidates who've gone a little bit off the reservation. Mr. Murdoch, most recently. I'm sure you guys all heard about that. Paula Lyons, do you agree with you buy the premise or not buy the premise?
Well, I'm not a sociologist, and I don't think any of us is up here, so I'm not totally one with the premise. But I think it does go back to the Nixon-Kennedy debates. I mean, even James Thurber at the time was quoted as saying, you know, that from now on I think it's safe to predict neither the Democrat nor the Republican Party will ever nominate for president a candidate without good looks, stage presence, and a sense of timing. They don't always win, but we often, you know, we can find exceptions to the rule, but this has happened since the influx and the power of television was introduced into politics.
Well,
But for a very long time, I think there was an effort to marry both style and substance. I mean, I worked before television for Kevin White, and that was a mayor who got the mix just right a lot of the time. He understood you had to have the substance, but he also understood the pizzazz. My concern about this electoral cycle is we got pizzazz. I'm not sure we have as much substance, or we have one and not the other. If we look at our Senate debate, we have style, we've got substance, but they're not wrapped up in the same package the way they used to be.
It seems to me that there are lots of policy issues being discussed, though. And in terms of whether or not somebody's looks play a role in whether or not we appeal to them as voters, which is what I think we were talking about before, I'm reminded, too, of the Nixon-Kennedy debate. People who listened to that debate on radio thought that Nixon won. People who heard or watched it on TV said, oh, no, it's definitely John F. Kennedy. So the notion that somehow we are reacting more strongly to good looks as an electorate, I would say is not true. And in terms of those substantive issues, I think if you're a Republican, particularly a right-wing-leaning Republican, you'd say, well, there's lots of substance. Michelle Bachmann and Sarah Palin and Mitt Romney, and they look good and they sound good. We love their policies. So I think that lack of substance argument has to do with where you are sitting on the political spectrum.
I think the details are missing.
Well, I do think that packaging, though, packaging is so important now in a way that it wasn't before.
Right.
Everything is packaged up, and it's because it works. People buy the package.
Right.
So that the surface of things says a lot and communicates a lot. And this is why maybe it's difficult to get to the substantive issues, because everyone's so aware of how they're going to be perceived that they're hamstrung. I mean, you almost, it's difficult to be honest, and so this has led to an awful lot of gridlock just in the public discourse.
I think that I know more about the mileage on Scott Brown's truck than his policies. I know where he got his barn coat, but I don't know where he came up with a couple, his
Where
his
did he
voting.
get the barn coat?
You know
That's
what?
been a
Actually, I
subject
do
of
know. His
great-
daughter got it for him at the Rentham outlets at it was like $600.
Wow.
But it was a nice one.
Is it
not
suede?
It's
or
suede.
it's suede?
Like a sort of distressed leather.
There are a lot of- okay.
Ask me what he voted for. I don't know. But that's part of the branding.
If you're talking about issues, though, I would argue that the last 3 debates have not been about issues. They've been about Obama asleep at the switch in the first debate, and Romney looking presidential, and Romney looking like he passed the commander-in-chief test. Second debate was about Obama waking up but maybe being a little bit too angry, and Mitt Romney, not being quite as good, but pretty good. It's all been about who's been the temperament of the candidates. And was Obama too sarcastic in the last debate? Was he too arrogant? Did he go after Mitt Romney too much? He attacked him too much? Was Romney too agreeable? It's not really...
To me, the major annoyance is nobody answers the question. Not either one.
Yeah.
Right.
Nobody answered the question about if the Afghanis are not ready for the troops to pull out, what will you do? Neither one of them even went close to it. And I think most voters are very, very frustrated with, they don't answer the question. They say what they want to say. And our business has created that atmosphere, let's be honest.
It's television. I think it's...
I don't know who would want to run today.
Well, you're talking about the looks of people in television, whether it's been true. Now, let's look back in our history. You know, I wouldn't say Harry Truman was a real looker. I don't know about you. I would not say he was.
Pre-debate.
Dwight Eisenhower.
But LBJ.
No, but look at this list. Let's work backwards, okay? Michelle and Barack Obama, good-looking couple.
Yep.
Mitt and Ann Romney, gorgeous-looking couple. Even the vice presidents. We've got Joe and Jill Biden.
Very nice.
Good-looking. Paul and Jana Ryan, I pronounced it wrong, good-looking couple. George and Laura Bush, Bill and Hillary Clinton, George Bush I, Barbara Bush, Ronald Reagan, Nancy Reagan, Gerald Ford, his wife, Betty. The only people that were marginally not attractive, I think, were Lyndon Johnson. This is since Kennedy.
But he was tall.
He was tall, and he became the president, obviously, after the assassination, so he wasn't elected the first time around. Richard Nixon and Jimmy Carter. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt. And you look at our race in Massachusetts, you know, we've got the matinee idol, Scott Brown, and Elizabeth Warren, who was a really good-looking woman who's 62 years old. I don't think you can get elected above mayor anymore without being a very attractive
Well, I think you could argue that the lower you get in elected office, the more representative of the population the candidates are. So the mayor and state reps and state senators and maybe even governors.
I hope there's someone in the room. They're going to look in the mirror tonight and be like, apparently I'm a dog. But I can run.
But the
Beacon
president...
Hill, sad sacks on Beacon Hill, right?
We won't name any names about who might look a little more.
Bartoleo, not in the matinee
His
idol.
mother loves him.
Only a face, only a mother could. You know, we won't get into specifics, but I think the point is when you get higher up and you're looking at the presidency, that we want our presidents to sort of be like the gods of Mount Olympus. They're sort of larger and more beautiful and smarter and more dynamic versions of us.
Well, if good looks work, though, they wouldn't have to spend $2 billion on the presidential race.
Because they're both good looking, so it cancels each other out. So the question is, does it matter?
Well, they're both good looking in very different
ways. That's true.
Very, very different ways.
Yeah, we were talking about that.
Yeah.
We were talking about the twinkle factor in the eyes, you know.
Right.
And
Exactly.
Please elaborate. What is the twinkle factor?
Oh, well, you know, Clinton had it. Did you ever hear of anybody who sat down next to President Clinton who wasn't like, wow, he bores right into you. He charms you to death. You want to be around him. And I think a lot of politicians have had that. George Bush had it.
Yeah.
He had that mischievous look in his eyes. I question whether Mr. Romney has it. I don't see it. Just being female for a moment and going, I know a twinkle when I see it. And I don't see a twinkle there.
Obama,
but you don't see it in Obama either.
I don't think he's...
I don't agree. I think last night when he was talking to Jay Leno, he might have had a twinkle. He was very funny.
Well, I find him incredibly charismatic. I mean, he's very elegant and he's extremely well-spoken. He's usually pretty buttoned up and cool. But then when he breaks into that smile, you know, it's just like it lights up the whole place.
You have to have everything. I mean, and especially now where, you know, it's a lot of things, TV, radio, all the media. But people just expect it. And I think that the media too, you know, and we can all be accused of it, sort of like makes fun of people who aren't beautiful. You know, think about Howie Carr and Granny Elizabeth Warren. You know, you hammer that message home and people start thinking it too. And so you wouldn't even, and I think so you wouldn't even start to think about running for anything unless you decided to go through a whole body makeover, because people will start talking about that and like, oh God, she's too heavy, she's too this, she's too that. Have you seen that nose? Her eyes are too close together, and guys too. But it becomes part of the discourse, and they can't hear what you're really saying.
It's not just in the political spectrum, though.
Right.
David Hamlisch, an economist, I think out of University of Texas in Austin, wrote a book called Beauty Pays. And he was not speaking broadly about politicians, but about how good-looking people tend to have higher, more important positions in the corporate world.
Make more money.
Make more money. The good-looking men, on the average, over a lifespan, earn $230,000 more over their working than women do. And so it really is, I think you could argue that the need to have beauty or good looks in the political world is really just an extension of what it's like out there in the workplace. Think about corporate CEOs, and our presidents tend to fit that image of what a corporate CEO looks like. Mostly, and you know this, you train these people
Well,
all the
I've been
time.
working as an executive coach in recent years and working in the corporate space, and it is amazing how often you have to bring this subject up. You collect feedback from colleagues and what have you, and they tell you that this person doesn't look like the position he or she holds. And they want them to. They want them to have that executive presence and the look that goes with it. And I think people resist that at their peril in terms of success. But Barbara Lee, of course, has done a lot of great research on women who have run for office. And she has found, after looking, I think, at the governor's races where women were running in 2002, and she was very sad to discover that appearance mattered a great deal more for the women candidates than the substance of their remarks. That the audience's first impression was stronger and harsher and never changed. And they would cut men a little more slack in that department, according to her. But it was just one of the things she evaluated, but that was a rather stunning result of her research.
Well, I wanted to get into that too, that there's a total, I think, double standard for men and women, and busily making my list today about good-looking women in politics. I mean, obviously, we mentioned Elizabeth Warren, Sarah Palin, gorgeous-looking woman. You look at almost every governor, recent female governor,
Jennifer Granholm.
Jennifer Granholm in Michigan. Kathleen Sebelius, who was the governor out in Kansas. Ann Richards, a million years ago, she's no longer with us, but she was a gorgeous-looking woman in Texas. Jean Shaheen in New Hampshire, nothing wrong with her. Christy Todd Whitman, now she was the governor of New Jersey. The guy who is the governor of New Jersey now, Chris Christie, I mean, can you imagine for a single second a woman as heavy as he is being elected the governor and being considered as a presidential candidate?
Never.
It just wouldn't happen. Right here in Massachusetts, the one governor we've had that's been a woman, Jane Swift. You know, she wasn't elected, but she was succeeded obviously Paul Cellucci. Very pretty woman. Some people thought she looked a little bit like Monica Lewinsky. I think that is a joke.
I hadn't heard that one.
Yeah. She did look a little bit like her, but a pretty woman. So you go right down the line about women in politics, and then you look at women on television, and if you guys watch the cable shows, you know, there's Bill O'Reilly, who's 60-something. He weighs about 95 pounds. He's really skinny. He's got these little bony little legs and stuff like that. And night after night, he's sitting next to some 25-year-old gorgeous thing, and they're always former federal prosecutors. And you say, when were they federal prosecutors? When they were like 12 years old, you know? But
Can we talk about what they're wearing?
Go ahead. Go ahead. What are they wearing?
And in fact, I just tweeted this out the other day. I saw a young, blonde, very voluptuous anchor woman in a very tight cocktail dress, wearing chandelier earrings, big blonde hair, talking about a raid in Afghanistan. And I'm thinking, what is wrong with this picture? Is she going to a cocktail party, or is she delivering the news? When did that become okay?
I don't know. But
that was not all right when I came up 150 years ago. There's an appropriate way to present yourself when there are serious issues at hand. Almost every female anchor woman on television right now looks like some kind of bimbo.
If you can't pass the sleeveless test, you can't be on now.
Well, and can you imagine on Morning Joe, you've got Minka and Joe Scarborough and Mike Barnacle.
And
Minka
that's
always
different.
Don't knock the sleeveless dress, please. Don't knock.
But you can do this.
I think a sleeveless dress is okay.
Think about
has to be your size.
Well, flip that a bit. We've got the sleeveless dress on Minka. She looks fabulous. But imagine if all those guys were in sleeveless shirts and sitting there. You know, why is it sort of, you know, I think Michelle Obama has sort of got this thing going, and in our day, cocktail sleeveless dresses were for cocktail parties or summer shifts, and now they've become. Andrea Mitchell even is wearing sleeveless dresses.
Yeah, the arms have come out of the closet.
I think it's very funny how
But
we
also-
want to see more skin with women. I
They
think,
must
than we
have
do with
plastic
men.
surgery now
here's
for
what
the
we-
arms.
What's so interesting here is look at how quickly we got obsessed with the women on TV and what they look like and what they're wearing. We are part of the issue as well. Do you know what I mean? We're not
Yes.
talking about what they do on the side or the charity work that they do. We're talking about their dresses.
Well,
per se.
because-
and I think that's just
because
a part
they're
of,
selling themselves as sex objects. I mean, that's what they're doing. I mean, they're
are
selling
they
sex.
or is the person who's hiring them? Because that's
No one tells you how to get dressed in the morning. I mean, I'm sorry.
do they? But do
Well,
they now?
but
they
who
tell
hires
you?
them? Who hires them? Then?
Yeah, I mean,
No, but
then
I-
they're all
but I
kind
am
of sent
assuming
in for
that-
like hair and makeup or whatever, once a year maybe or two.
Yeah.
But it wasn't sort of like that they said you have to look a certain way.
But the
I mean,
hiring is what's telling.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
but there are various
hiring is
ways to
what's
put yourself
telling.
together no matter what you look like. You can be gorgeous and dress appropriately for,
But no one's
for
going
the
to talk,
job you're doing.
But people are going to talk about you, and here's why. This is why I'm on radio. A. B. I work with 4 men who are lovely. But let me tell you, Channel 5 goes on, and it's like, well, Dottie looks nice today, and Bianca looks lovely, and blah, blah, blah. And they know them all by name, and they love them.
But that was always true.
Yes, but I mean, it's just
How
one of
about
those
Fox and Friends? You ever see the outfits on Fox and Friends? You got the
No.
2 guys sitting there with their legs always out like this.
Akimbo.
I don't know why they do that, but I'm not going to do it. Men, oh yes.
Very aggressive.
Well, at least it's not
Aggressive.
the women
And
yet.
the
That'll
women
be next in the
ladies,
contract.
right.
Not just sleeveless, but cleavage and really, really short.
Yeah.
Now, I guess my thing with these women is if there's a woman on Fox who's beautiful. Her name is Megyn Kelly. She's really smart. It doesn't bother me a bit that she's beautiful when she's really smart. What bothers me is when they're beautiful and they're airheads, and it just seems very discouraging for women that you can be an airhead and on television talking about Afghanistan as opposed to a Megyn Kelly who's very smart, or Barbara Walters, who's obviously older now, but one of the pioneers, really, really smart, a good-looking woman in her day. Meredith Vieira, that was on the Today Show, a very good-looking woman, but also really smart. So that's okay. But the question I think we should answer here is, does it matter? Does it matter to the citizenry of the United States that you have these gorgeous-looking, not that bright women on television with these middle-aged guys that are there because of their brains? Or does it matter that you have to be Jennifer Granholm to be elected governor in Michigan, who's a really gorgeous-looking woman? Does it matter?
Yeah, it does
hurt
matter,
us?
I think, because it makes you feel like just as a woman, it matters because it makes you feel like you have an expiration date. I didn't, like in terms of your career, you go into the media, and I don't think of myself as like a baseball player or a football player. I thought, I'll do this until I'm, 65 years old. But you realize more and more that that's not happening.
Right.
And that you certainly age out of stuff. You just do. Don't you think?
Oh yes, I think women in television are obsessed with it. Women in media are obsessed with aging. But I'm talking about the bigger picture of the politics of the country and the elections and all the things getting out of our mess with the economy and with healthcare and all these things. Does it matter that unless you are really sort of a matinee idol type, you're not going to be in power positions in politics in America?
I think it does matter, and I think it's a shame, but it does matter, and there's not much we can do with the way our brains act like little computers and pass judgment and assume things about people based on their appearance. We all do it. It's automatic. Our brains work like those computers, and we just make those assumptions. So I don't think there's anything we can do about that. I just hope that this return to another era is not, and it may very well be, but it feels to me sometimes like it is, if it is real, that we are nostalgic for a different time and a simpler time. What it says to me is that we are in a period of tremendous uncertainty with huge changes happening all around. And that's what people do when faced with huge change. They hold on like crazy. They revert back to the way things used to be. And who's the woman who's just written a book on the rise of women? How they're getting more education.
Oh yeah.
How that men
and out earning men
Right,
in many
and
places.
Right.
I mean, and she was bringing
Hannah Rosen.
Right, bringing up the point that the fear in men, a lot of this comes from all of this huge change. And white men, according to her research, are the least flexible of all the people on the planet. I don't think women are out there going, we must maintain our #1 status in the world and show the rest of the world how to behave. We don't really care about that, but a lot of men do, I think. They care deeply about our #1 image. So, I think this is a time of huge uncertainty.
I would absolutely agree with you, and I think that we have to remember that the same culture that produces Mitt Romney produced Barack Obama. So we have a man who's almost a perfect reflection of what the United States is
becoming
right now.
And is
he is as much white as he is black. He comes from a very mixed background, and he is our president. That is huge. And I think it has sent some people into panic mode. And I think that while there's, one step forward, there's always going to be, 2 steps back. So I think we're getting a little, reaction to that because there is a lot of fear. But I think we're headed in the right direction. I don't think, 10 years ago you could have imagined this. So
you mentioned some little quiz that you said.
Did they say it?
Bad men.
Yeah.
Who said it? Mad Men or members of the GOP?
Yeah, exactly.
Are you going to give us a quiz?
Yeah. I have some of them. But what I want to mention too is that speaking of Mad Men, in the last season there was this great scene where Roger Sterling looks out the window and there are protests outside, and it's the early '60s, and he looks at Don Draper and he's like, when's it going to get back to normal? And it really just, in one line, encapsulated what was going on in the country between Barack Obama and Mitt Romney, and these these captains of industry, these white males who've just had it so great for so long, are just really wait. I made dinner. I had dinner last night, so I got home early, and dinner was ready. The house was clean. I had company. I didn't do this for my husband, but there were candles lit. Lucy was changed. My daughter was changed, and he walked in the door. He's like, "Whoa!" I'm like, "Well, this is what Mitt Romney wants." But the truth is, what I realized, and it was quite sobering because my daughter has Down syndrome. If it was the 50s, Lucy would be in an institution, and I would be drinking heavily because I would be working. I wouldn't be working. I wouldn't be doing what I love. Right. And so that, to me, was like, yeah, it's a great meal, but at what price?
Right. Yeah.
So, and I think that's what scares me about this election because, we are moving forward. Going forward, it's great, and to think that we could just sort of roll back the clock makes me a little.
I don't think we will. I think that as a culture, we overcorrect. We had the excesses, some would say, of the Clinton administration, and then we, had George Bush. We go back and forth, and I would agree with Joyce. I don't think that the fact that we've got, I don't want to get a little panicky over here. We've got Mitt Romney and Scott Brown, and therefore, we're all going back to the 50s. I think that these are just reflections of the kinds of people who self-select, who have the confidence to wake up and say, I could be governor, I could be senator, I could be president. And that confidence comes, getting back to childhood, you're talking about, young kids, taller kids, better-looking kids tend to have that confidence. There was a study done that showed that people were shown pictures of good-looking people, and people who saw those pictures tended to rate those people higher. Oh, they must be much smarter than anybody else. But television and Mad Men, or television in general, reflecting cultural uncertainty, you could argue that happens in the movies. The phenomenal success of The Godfather, the phenomenal success of The Sopranos, in which there are men with very clear roles. There's a hierarchy. The women are in a certain place and men are in a certain place, and what husband doesn't love his mind here, coming home and having dinner ready? There are certain things that are just, I think, constants. But I would argue that those cultural reference points are the same as the political ones. We take comfort in a certain sort of familiar mode of living and a familiar mode of politics. And go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was
All right, I was just going to ask Lauren to give us a couple of questions from the quiz.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yes,
get them
let's
right.
do the quiz.
And then I want to talk about Scott Brown before we get to our question.
Okay, well, if you don't like what's being said, change the conversation. Don Draper or Mitt Romney?
Draper.
Draper.
Good. That's good.
Yeah.
Next one.
I didn't know.
This is either Don Draper or Newt Gingrich. It doesn't matter what I do. People need to hear what I have to say. There's no one else who can say what I can say. It doesn't matter where I live.
That's
Mitt Romney.
Yeah.
No, Newt.
No,
Newt?
Newt.
Was
Yep.
that Newt?
Yep.
Wow. He's short
How about this
himself.
one? Mitt Romney or Roger Sterling? Well, I got to go learn a bunch of people's names before I fire them.
Roger.
Definitely Roger.
That's very
Okay.
good.
This one, Rick Santorum or Pete Campbell. I find it almost remarkable for a black man to say, now we're going to decide who are people and who are not people.
Oh, boy, I think that's the politician there.
Rick Santorum.
Was it Rick Santorum?
Yeah, Rick
Yep.
Santorum.
Wow.
Yep. Okay, Bert Cooper, who runs Roger Sterling Cooper.
Thank you.
Or
I've
Ron
never
Paul.
seen Mad Men myself. so-
Yeah. I miss the closet. Homosexuals, not to speak of the rest of society, were far better off when social pressure forced them to hide their activities.
Bert or whom?
Ron Paul.
Ron Paul.
Ron Paul.
Wow.
Yep. So.
Wow.
Scary.
Yeah.
Well, we're sort of picking on the men here. I would suspect that Michelle Bachmann and Sarah Palin and others of that political ilk,
Yeah,
the
Betty
female
Draper said some-
category,
yeah,
that
nasty
might have
things,
had
too,
some
and
pretty
sort of-
retro
yeah.
things to say as well.
It was online. I didn't make it up.
But
I
we're
didn't do
talking
it
about
myself.
politicians and media. How about sports, too? Sports, as Margery knows, is not my sweet spot. But would Jeremy Lin have lingered so long without getting signed if he wasn't this sort of gangly
Yeah.
Harvard Asian guy?
That's a
would
good
Tom
point.
Brady be as wildly successful as he is? I mean, he is, a god, and I think he is, what, a quarterback? I think.
He's a quarterback.
If
That
he
would be
didn't look,
correct.
if he
Even
didn't look
I
the
know
way
that.
he did.
He's married to
But I-
Gisele Bundchen.
It was, right, but would they be the superstar couple
No.
that they are?
No.
So I think this beauty obsession crosses over everything.
It's a star culture obsession. Everybody wants to be a star. I just read this recently. In fact, it was in a new book written by critic Ty Burr.
Ty Burr from
yeah,
Globe,
his
yes.
fabulous
Terrific.
new book. And he made the point that, 20 or 30 years ago, if you asked a 9-year-old what they wanted to be, or in the 50s, they would have said, a fireman, a teacher, president, whatever. If you asked a kid now, a 10-year-old or a 9-year-old now, they would say, I want to be a dancer, an actor, an athlete.
They say I want to be
Professions that
famous.
involve
famous.
looking at me, spotlight on me, celeb culture. I mean, so this is a fact, this is a reality, and it has to do with technology because now we can see everything. We can photograph each other. We can photograph ourselves. We can be stars on our own websites. We can go to movies and see stars and then come home and make fun of them on our websites. We are now all powerful.
And we have reality shows, too. I mean, think about the
Yes.
number of reality shows where kids watch those. I watch them thinking, wow.
And these people who were just anybody are now mega stars out of nothing. The Kardashians. Why are they stars? Who knows? But given that we have a culture so image obsessed, what we need to do is take control of the images, of those images, which is why I get so hopped up about the images that some women in the media choose to project. They don't have to make that choice.
Yeah.
It makes us appear insubstantial.
Well, the hooker outfits are not probably the best signal to be sending out from the.
But at the same
7
time-
o'clock in the morning.
Somebody like Scott Brown, gets to pose in a layout,
yeah, if that was
and
a
then
woman-
just talks about that. Can you
If it-
imagine
would her
any
career
woman
be
in
over?
politics if
Yeah.
those pictures surfaced?
Yeah,
She'd
you
be
wonder
done.
about that.
She'd be done.
Well, I have a theory about Scott Brown, and I did want to talk about that for a minute because he and Elizabeth Warren are a very close race. It's interesting. Elizabeth Warren does much better with women than Scott Brown does. You would think the guy as handsome as he is, it would be the women that were swooning. I think 3/4 of the men in Massachusetts are like totally smitten with Scott Brown.
Oh, yeah. They
Either-
want to be him.
They want
They want to be him. He's the varsity king, and when they were in high school, the varsity king wouldn't give them the time of day. And now, they'll meet Scott Brown at some event, or they think Scott Brown is like them, or they think Scott Brown is going to be their buddy. I'm on the radio with a guy named Jim Browdy, who's he's not here. I don't think he's here, is he? No, he's not here. Okay, well, I'll tell you a story about him since he's not here. He's very liberal, very smart guy. I would say he's practically a communist. However, Scott Brown texts Jim.
Really?
Here comes our love theme song. Is this our love theme song that we play? Scott Brown texts Jim Browdy on the radio while we're on the air, and Jim is like, I have a text from Scott. I have a text from Scott, you know. And now I tease him that there's this love affair going on. So it's a weird phenomenon with Scott Brown. Now, I would say that if Scott Brown didn't look the way Scott Brown looks, I mean, I know he's bipartisan, I know he crosses the aisle, I know he's a nice guy, he's got a lovely family. If Scott Brown looked like, say, Mitch McConnell, the Senate Minority Leader, or Harry Reid, the Senate Majority Leader, or Bob DeLeo, who's the
Bob DeLeo.
Yeah, Bob DeLeo. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Italians, Margery.
I shouldn't be picking the Italians. But I mean,
Hammered.
what is Scott Brown's immense popularity in Massachusetts about, ladies?
Well, why is Mitt Romney polling so well with women now, too? If the theory is that women are so threatened by Mitt Romney. Is it image? Is it because they have
Only
a
white,
similar look?
upper-class, well-educated women.
True.
In
Right,
fact, there
right.
was
I should
just
say
a
white
Gallup
women,
poll about this. They did a poll, NBC and Wall Street Journal did a poll to find out if it were economic issues that you were talking about, did you think Obama or Romney were more likely to fit the bill? And in that large poll, 47% of women said Obama and only 39% went for Romney. But in a subset of that poll, a Gallup poll, they asked, they focused in on women, and they found out that when you flipped it, that, I guess I'm getting this wrong, but it turned out that more white women would vote for Romney rather than Obama in terms of the economy. So it really kind of parsed out exactly who the constituency is.
They've gone from being the soccer moms to the waitress moms,
Waitress
or the
moms,
Walmart
yes, right.
moms who are voting for Romney.
But let's get back to...
But I think our audience would love
Oh, okay. All right. Then we'll have to not talk about Scott Brown anymore. I didn't get anybody's theories about why in a Democratic state Scott Brown is neck and neck.
Not a clue.
Not a clue. Just breathe.
I think it is. It has a lot to do with the truck, the girls, the American Ayla. I mean, just the fact that they look like they're carved from cream cheese.
Okay.
And we're
Honestly.
Yankees.
So there you go.
And Gail Huff is so lovely. I love her.
Okay. It's his good looks. There you go. That's it. So I guess what we're supposed to do here is if anybody has any questions, they can line up at the microphone and ask the questions. Is this gentleman lining up to ask a question? Hi. Go ahead.
Continue with Lauren's quiz. Who was it who called Sarah Palin the C word?
Ooh.
And is hailed as a champion of women?
I think that might have been Bill Maher.
Bill Maher.
Oh yeah, but he's tricky.
He was contributing $1 million to the Democrats. Imagine if a right-wing Republican did such a thing, and the Republicans accepted his $1 million, and this man did not apologize, which Maher has not. What would you folks be saying?
I think you're mistaken about that. I think he did apologize. Yes, he did. He did, and he took a lot of grief for saying that as well. He should have, and he did apologize. And a lot of people were quite vociferous in their complaints about him.
I have to laugh at the Fort Hall Forum's literature here, which describes Scott Brown as a self-described conservative, which of course he is not. He's barely a Republican, let alone a conservative.
True.
So you haven't made your case in lumping him in with Romney. As far as the JFK-Nixon debate and those who saw it on radio as opposed to those who saw it on television, if you look into that further, Jan, you'll find that that so-called study and survey has no real scientific basis. It is a very, very small sample, and nobody who's looked at it, the experts, gives it any credence whatsoever, in spite of the fact that it's repeated over and over and over again. Margery, you're bestowing of good looking on some certain women politicians whose names I won't name are bizarre, I must say.
Starts
filibustering.
Yeah. Do you have
the case has not been proven here. The premise of this argument.
Next question.
Well, what is do you have a question?
No reaction against the 50s. It so happens to be a point in time in which Romney and Scott Brown and some Republican folks
So
don't
you
like
don't have a
happen to be
question.
prominent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hi. I'm a little more moderate. What puzzles me is why any woman would want to vote for Mitt Romney. First of all, his attitude towards women's rights and so forth is, to put it politely, would be schizophrenic. His tax plan doesn't compute. It's ridiculous. His health care plan is non-existent.
Question?
And also, you know, he wants to increase the defense budget by a couple of $100 billion a year. This is the party that's supposed to balance the budget.
Yeah.
I mean, all he's going to do is make the budget about $1.5 billion instead of $1 billion.
I don't mean to interrupt
So
you,
the
but we're
question
trying to
is-
get to the
So
questions.
So could you explain to me, from my point of view, as I say, moderate Mitt is full of it. Why would any woman want to vote for Mitt Romney under these circumstances?
Well, I think a lot of individuals, men and women, don't like to think of themselves as one-issue voters. So that's part of the explanation that I take heart in. I can remember, my father was a Catholic physician. He was completely against abortion, no surprise. But that didn't stop him from voting for candidates who had that view, because he educated us not to be one-issue voters. So I'm sure there are a lot of women, for reasons of economy and other things, that believe that, why not give this guy a shot?
Yeah, but
I think we're going through a very volatile period of up and down and up and down and up and down, but I think that a lot of people have a lot of different reasons for voting.
Well, as Joyce pointed out, it's a subsection of women. I don't think that liberal democratic women, whether they're white, black, Hispanic, or Asian, are racing to vote for Romney. And I think it's a hard question to answer. Who do the blacks vote for? Who do the whites vote for? Who do the women vote for? So it's I think we have to drill down into that subset of who is more conservative, who would be more likely to lean toward Romney. And you have to factor in, too, I think, the fact that these so-called Walmart waitress mothers are feeling the pinch. And of course, the biggest, I think or maybe the biggest undecided voting bloc now are married women. Did I read that correctly? Married women
suburbs.
in the suburbs are the ones who both candidates are going after right now.
Well, remember, too, before the first debate, that Obama had a double-digit lead among women, and then he got up at the first debate and totally blew it, and the Mitt Romney, who'd been portrayed as some, total right-wing nut by Obama, get up
I wonder
there
how that happened.
and didn't look like a total right-wing nut. And the Etch-a-Sketch has happened, as Eric Fernstrom predicted, and he's come back to the middle, as a lot of candidates do in the general election. And you saw Mitt Romney, and he sounds moderate, and you're not going to factcheck.org to see, is he telling you the truth about his tax policy, or isn't he? And people, the economy's tough, and I can see where a lot of women say, I think the Republicans' best ad is, and it came out from the Republican Party when they say, Barack Obama's a good guy, nice guy, family man, great guy. He's had his shot. He couldn't do it. Give somebody else a chance. And I think if you don't have a job,
it's okay to make a change.
Yeah,
I
if you
remember
don't have
thinking
a
that
job,
was very
effective ad.
Yeah.
I think that's
it may
the
be
reason.
effective, but his whole program is ridiculous. There's
Well,
nothing.
It just depends on what your policies are. Woman or man, I think that.
Yeah, you're hurting. But does anybody else have any questions? Thank you, sir.
Well, Miss Eagan must know something about style over substance, since she had a facelift too. But
I did. I wrote about it in Boston Magazine. It was
isn't that
the
interesting?
weekend.
It was a mini one.
It was, yeah. You can read about it in Boston Magazine. It was very exciting. But the beauty of the mini facelift, just in case anybody thinks about it, is you can have it on Friday, and you can go to a cocktail party on Saturday. So
With a sleeveless dress, no doubt. But I
Yes.
was going to ask you, no one really personifies style over substance, and Barack Obama does, whose hope and change turned out to be a complete mirage, and who has continued most of Bush's policies, very aggressive ones, especially in foreign affairs. So if we were really interested in style over substance, then we would invite and pay more attention in the media and elsewhere to third-party candidates like Jill Steiner or Ralph Nader or Gary Johnson, who do talk about substantive issues and substantive
yeah,
things, wouldn't we?
we are getting a lot of filibustering here, and a certain amount of hostility as well, sir. But do you want to ask a question? I could give you
all
some.
you talked about is Republicans and Democrats. There are other candidates in the election.
Well,
you do.
and they've gotten nowhere, as you
and
know.
they've gotten no
Jill
exposure,
Stein,
publicity
with due
in the
respect,
media.
has run for 3 things in Massachusetts. She couldn't win state representative, so I think it's a little bit presumptuous of Jill Stein, who's a fine woman and a great physician, to go from losing continually as a state rep in Massachusetts to trying to run for president. I don't think the voters are behind her there. But Gary Johnson may get some votes in New Hampshire, and he may get somewhere as the Libertarian candidate for Barack Obama. But if you want, I can sign you. I have an autographed copy of my little mini facelift story, sir, if you'd like.
You might want to consider one yourself. You never know.
I think it did do wonders for my ego. Anyone else have a question?
I have a question.
Oh, my God.
A woman with a question.
With a malarkey T-shirt.
Yeah, but
I like that.
If handsome is our new political candidate, and it sounds like that's maybe a place that politics is going, what can you guys suggest to us as voters to try to figure out if, is down the road, maybe we're just going to get these really pretty puppets, right, who are going to just be the talking pieces to the people behind them. So if that's the case, what are your suggestions for voters to really try to find out, is it just a pretty face or is there more going on behind it?
I don't think we're going to change the fact that
I agree.
Good-looking people are going to be the most likely individuals to run for office. There are exceptions to that. I think where the challenge comes in is holding their feet to the fire. And reporters have to do it. Some do it better than others. Voters have to do it. I mean, I don't think we're lacking for a vocal democracy here. But as Paula said, even during the presidential debates, some did it better than others. Making sure that, what is the 5-point program of Mitt Romney? What are the specifics? And I think journalists like Margery do it very well. But I think it really is up to the public to
be informed.
And to put and news directors to put pressure on their reporters who present the most public forum for voters to get a look at the candidates, to say, let's not let them get away with not answering.
And it's a lot of work because there's a lot of static out there, and there are many, many layers to what you're seeing all the time. And I think this is the thing that we're also aware of now. I mean, maybe back in the 50s, we used to think everything we saw was real. But now we know that's not the case. That's the subject of, many films, beginning with the candidate, and, and way before then, that we understand that there are layers and things aren't what they seem. And we know that up front. So you got to dig, and it's hard. But there are many outlets. The hard thing is to find an outlet that's unbiased.
Right. Exactly.
That's what's tough, where you're not just hearing your own self back to yourself.
Right.
I think one of the things, and a lot of people disagree with me about this, but I think one of the things that was sad about the debates is that the moderators didn't step in more and say, the late, great Tim Russert used to do, when either one, because Obama cooked a lot of his lines too, they both did, and one of the moderators said, well, Mr. Romney or President Obama, you said this in July, and now you're saying this in October, because you had no way of knowing. In the first debate, remember they're going back and forth in that $5 trillion in taxes? You're thinking, well, who's telling the truth? Who's not telling the truth? How are you supposed to know that if you're a regular person that's living, working 2 jobs?
And isn't it sad, too, that now we're reading stories about this candidate lied 59% of the time, but this one over here only 33% of the time. And you're like, wait a minute, what's going on? What are we teaching the kids today? I'd like to know, because really, I think we've seen it on both sides. There's a lot of lying going on. And I want the FTC to regulate ads. For heaven's sakes, they're chasing yogurt makers over their flavorings and fining them. But
you can lie.
Political discourse is ridden with lies, and no one seems to care. It's really very frustrating, along with not answering questions.
I think we see, ironically, we see most of the expose about the slipperiness of policy positions on the comedy station. So Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert
one who plays them.
does in fact, Jon Stewart did, going back to journalists holding politicians' feet to the fire, he did a wonderful juxtaposition of Martha Raddatz interviewing moderating the vice presidential debate, where she actually pushed them. And he said, oh my God, look, a journalist acting like a journalist.
Yeah. Imagine that.
Imagine that. So it takes a comedy show to sort of point out the fact that we've become used to a certain passivity, and not all the time, in the way reporters are asking and following up questions.
Well,
At
when
least
you
on
see-
TV,
but it is
at least
hard.
on TV,
I mean,
I think print journalists are doing a fabulous job of comparing and contrasting. If we didn't have the newspapers, we wouldn't really know where these candidates stood.
But when you see the British press, that's when you
True,
see
the British press,
people
right.
who really will put a politician's.
It is hard, though, to keep up with, like, you said you're working you're working a full-time job or
Yep.
2 jobs, and you got
Family.
kids and all that other stuff, and then you've got to sort of slog through the rhetoric and figure out who's telling the truth. It's like it's another job, and so it's it is the Comedy Channel's the best because at least they're like entertaining you while actually kind of informing you, in a bipartisan way. So.
That's a great question. That's so really good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Your face looks fabulous.
Thank you. Thank you.
I wanted to sort of talk a little bit about the despair of sort of talking about the informed electorate, because I think of 2 things. One that you brought up, Paula, in regard to the packaging. In very many ways, no one's really looking at substantial issues. I mean, some of the things that Mitt Romney has been able to say is because he's packaged it so well that it hides the fact of what his real stances are. And then I think the second is that we're not looking to be educated ourselves. I was listening to a comment on NPR where more people have Googled Ryan's workout videos and pictures than actually his stance on Medicaid and Medicare and Social Security. So I worry that we've come to sort of like the bottom feeders at this point in regard to sort of not really looking at what the issues are, but really buying into the gloss and the packaging.
Well, I do think that the problems we're facing now in this country are far more complex than most people have the ability to deal with on a regular basis. I mean, every time we people who try to keep up, and every time you read about the various proposals for either making Medicare or Social Security solvent, I mean, in about 10 minutes, your head is spinning, and I think if you add what you're talking about,
and then you start Googling those workout videos because you need to wake up.
You want to laugh.
And then you reset, and then you go back to the.
But I mean, it's very worrisome when you think that, you're right, of course, everybody's so busy, but it's very worrisome that the people we elect cannot have those kinds of complex conversations with each other and figure out what's best for the country. I think that's the essential frustration of today. They're going to go back down there and scream at each other in my way or the highway, no matter what. I think that's what makes us feel so powerless.
Right.
And the issues we face, we fixed the easy problems. Now the ones we have left are really hard. I mean, just throw up global warming and whoo!
Yeah.
I mean, there are just so many of those issues that are very serious and very complex and very hard to wrap your brain around. So, I'm with you. I don't blame people who go looking for the workout video. They need a break, perhaps.
But you do sometimes wonder whether people are so busy that people don't pay attention to politics the way, even when I was first a reporter, which is 25 years ago now, you would go to these rallies in Dorchester the night before they were electing city councilors in Boston. There'd be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people there. It was a really big deal. Newspapers don't, because we're shrinking, but television stations don't do it either. We don't cover City Hall in Boston the way we used to. We don't cover the State House the way we used to. I think it's very hard to find out what your legislators are doing up there. And
people don't protest like they used to.
They don't protest. And
they've also, let's face it, when we were 25 years ago, government still had some respect among the electorate. And I'm sorry to say, blame the Republican Party for demonizing government so that no one trusts it. But this is a worldwide phenomenon now, too. It isn't just in the United States that people are upset with their governments, but they have nothing but disdain for it now. You talk to your children and young people, in my case, nieces and nephews who are in their 20s and 30s. They're very, very civic-minded and charity-minded, but government? Who would ever want to be involved in that? And I'm sorry about that conversation, because in the years that I worked in politics, it was very satisfying, very difficult, very satisfying, very interesting, and important work. And I think there's nothing but disdain for it now.
I think that's a bit strong, and I think that anybody at the Kennedy School of Government, for instance, would disagree with that. I see a lot of local campaigns that have generated interest from kids, high school kids and college kids, to work on them, not to the degree
then I'm glad.
that we used to have, but also going out to a rally. Why go to a rally when you can sit home and, depending on your political view, watch MSNBC or watch Fox?
Yeah.
And we have a way of now self-selecting to hear what we want to hear. And if you don't want to watch that, you can watch 1,000 other shows.
Just even the way that you read the news, because you don't have the newspaper anymore. So you just go to the articles you want. But you know, how many times when you'd read a newspaper, you'd come across something like, that's happening? Oh, I didn't even know that.
You don't have a newspaper anymore?
Do I not have a newspaper anymore? I get newspapers at, I do get newspapers at work. But no, honestly, where do I get my news? My phone.
You do.
And I do. I get my news on my phone and on my computer. But mostly it's like, you know, Twitter feeds and stuff like that. Yeah, I know.
I get the paper. I still
I know, but I do. I
and
just
I'm always
find
horrified.
I love the paper.
We get
Sunday
four of them.
mornings, great. The Globe, it's great.
I think
Beverly
there's a
Beckham,
woman here.
great.
So how does
I
America...
have a question.
Young
Yes,
lady?
I wanted to ask, what do you do when people who have neither style nor substance try to interject themselves onto the political scene? Take, for instance, Donald Trump's announcement.
Oh, my God.
Question. That's
Great question.
You know, we
Why
really
anybody
disgraced-
talks to him, interviews
we
him,
disgraced
or
ourselves.
cares
Let's
about
blame
him.
the press on the Donald
Yes.
Trump
Oh, we
phenomenon.
should.
Okay,
We
you have to
ourselves.
take the
We
book.
did, because all yesterday morning is, what is he going to say? Obama, you know, Michelle filed divorce papers. You know,
He's a drug dealer.
Yeah,
That was
he's
the other rumor.
all these kinds of things, and we were all waited with bated breath, and we just got totally taken in and disgraced ourselves.
But it wasn't just all waiting. I mean, I knew it was going to be something lame.
At this
and
point
then
we
he
knew.
made a giant ass of himself.
But when you looked
so
at
what could be better?
But he still gets covered, and the press knows this.
The TV stations up. You know, we watch them in the morning. You probably have in your studio
TV.
too.
Yep.
3 networks. The Donald came on about
They
every
should have been
15
out
minutes.
covering the arts.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
Exactly.
He's gone round the bend. He just has.
He's gone around the bend.
He's like that. You realize you're like, well, that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, it really was.
I
so
hope that's it.
Yeah, that's.
I think
hope
that it
he
was
does it
such an
again to put the
embarrassment
final
to
nail in the
everybody, you know, that was the rumor that was what he was offering, and also it was like almost extortion. It really bothered me. It just that.
But you remember he led in the polls for a while when he was announcing he was going to run for
more
president.
depressing than
That's
basically
scary.
led in the polls. So some people, I
But
guess.
polls of whom? I mean, well,
Yeah.
never mind.
Yes, sir.
Hi, I had a question. One of the things I see when I watch, I was wondering how much, if there's any pressure on women to, even if they are intelligent, to play dumb. And I'm going to use a couple of examples. And then I'm going to
Not my radio
then I'll
show,
use
right?
a male
Yeah.
example. No, but I mean, I've watched Fox and Friends a couple of times, and I don't know if Gretchen Carlson was a Miss America, or she was a Miss America runner-up. So I don't know what she was. But if you Google her background, she went to Stanford. She did like a stint at either Cambridge or Oxford. She played the cello for the competition in Miss America contest.
Wow.
She's really bright. But I've heard some spectacularly stupid things come out of her mouth in the sense that, that are practiced. Like she said, well, Obama keeps appointing czars. And I Googled the word czar to see what it meant. And they're like, this woman probably speaks Russian. You know?
Right.
And
Wow.
I said, and then I've
Interesting.
seen it with like, some of you guys might have known, what's her name, Alison Camerata? I remember having a
Yeah,
Yeah.
her right.
friend of a
Allison.
friend around
Yeah,
here, and I
right.
said, I know her opinions on Fox are not her own. And then, but then you look at someone like a buffoon on Fox, like say Bill O'Reilly, and you look at a buffoon on MSNBC. So I'm being partisan, like Chris Matthews, and they're allowed to be as buffoony as possible, you know, without any real. Their substance doesn't really matter. I mean, they both pretty much go off the rails quite a bit. But I don't think a woman could do that. I think the woman, when I look at Gretchen Carlson, I just go, they've got her in a role. Megyn Kelly is really bright. That's
She's
really
very
obvious.
smart. Yeah.
And you watch but I look at some of the other women on there, and I'm there like, geez, I bet they have trouble reading that prompter.
I don't know.
Aside from Rachel Maddow, who are the female pundits out there? Aside
I
from
can't.
But that was a question.
Well, on TV.
Is there any pressure on women to play a role?
And I would add that, I'm sorry, I think Mika Brzezinski plays that too.
Yeah.
Oh, you said this
I
before.
think you're
Callie
right,
Cross
Callie.
is sitting
Right,
in the
Callie
front row.
Cross, GBH, I think you're right.
By the way, she was in a Vanity Fair article with her legs
Up in the air.
See, why do women do this? Why do they do this? Women are in charge of their images. I mean, I was not getting that kind of direction. You've got to be stupid on television. I don't think you were getting that direction. I don't know why some people go that route. I honestly don't know. It's a mystery to me.
Because Nika is a smart woman too, obviously.
But she
Well,
does
you
play
know,
the
they pro-
foil.
you know,
She plays the foil
they
rather
want-
than instigate questions more often than not, I think.
Yeah, and they probably want her to not seem too in the face of who's Joe Scarborough or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah. You know, don't poke the bear because then it would turn viewers off. You'll be a shrew or something. I mean, I can imagine a lot of conversations behind the closed doors.
But we're also a country where
I must say, I once talked to Joe Scarborough, and I said to him, I resent the fact that you have this thing back and forth with Mika. It puts her in a weird position. I don't like it. He said, and I quote, she plays into it. Now,
Blame the victim.
She's just saying.
I just
So
want
it's
to
a
roll.
play-
They're putting on a show, and
Yeah.
that's the story, the narrative she
But
wants to tell.
it's a comfortable narrative because we're a country where we feel most comfortable with women as first ladies and not as presidents.
Absolutely.
And
Right.
if you look at India or Israel or Norway or England or Pakistan, countries where there are no first lady or second, helping, institutionalized helping mate, you've got women running the country. So I think it starts at the top. My conspiracy theory is first ladies are feeding into this sort of women as not quite as powerful, the image not quite as powerful as, or smart or competent
So should
as
you
their
elect
husbands.
couples?
I'm with Germaine Greer on this. Let's abolish the first lady and just, have women. Let's start fresh. We'll have all of our daughters and sons raised to just sort of see a man or a woman as leader of the free world.
That's a good idea.
There we go.
Another question?
That could be a whole other forum discussion, couldn't it? Abolishing the first lady.
It's a bit of a continuation of the last conversation that resulted, but you were talking earlier about how women, well, not just women, but we get caught up in what people are wearing. And I've recently worked for J. Crew for about a year, which has been lauded for being the wardrobe of the first lady in public.
Mm-hmm.
But then she's the first lady. But then we get Sarah Palin, who is criticized for wearing $500 shoes. So do you think that the way women present themselves, especially in politics, but also in other places of power, do you regard that as a cause or an effect of their public representation?
I think it's an effect.
I think it's an effect.
I think it's effect. I would.
I think it's an effect. I mean, I know there was a woman corporate president in this town who expected her women executives to look the part. And she knew how much shoes cost, and she wanted the people she was paying a lot of money to wear the expensive shoes. So I think it is an effect. But it's very nice when the first lady of a man who wants to be seen as a guy who's come from humble beginnings buys some of her clothing, at least, in a reasonably priced store available to everyone. So I think it's an effect, don't you?
I do, and I think we don't scrutinize sartorially as much the presidents because just as a culture we don't really pay as much attention to what men
dark
are
suits.
Well, there's not that much variety.
It's easy.
Obama
It's easier.
himself has said he only wears a dark suit every single day because he
it's a
wants to
uniform.
eliminate as many decisions as he possibly can because he has to make so many decisions.
Wouldn't you love to be able to do that?
Yeah, I've often said a man's suit, what's more elegant than that?
And
I wish we had that uniform.
women were dressing for other women too, mostly, aren't
But look at how
Yeah,
we
what was
criticized, and a lot of Democrats did this too, Hillary Clinton when she was running. I mean, was it Chris Matthews who talked about her cankles? Was it Chris?
Oh, everybody does.
Yeah.
It
was
it's like
horrible. And her pantsuits and her hairstyles and all that kind of thing. She said about a year ago, and I thought, good for her, when someone criticized how she looked doing something, a picture that was taken of her, and she said something like, I'm paraphrasing, well, I don't really have to care anymore.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so great, that she just is kind of moved beyond that. But it was terrible the way she was criticized when she was running for president, I thought. So is that it on the questions? Anybody else have any questions, or are we? Are we done? I think we're done. Anybody else have any last words? Any ladies? Paula, Jan, Joyce, Lauren?
Well, I think things...
Get out there and vote.
Get out there and vote. But
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.